Good evening, everyone. Would you please join us in a salute to the flag, and please remain standing for a moment of silence for Pauline Siegel, wife of former Vice Mayor Noel Siegel. Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. And a moment of silence for Pauline Siegel. Thank you very much. Pursuant to Section 5, Chapter 231, Public Laws 1975, this is to state for the record that adequate notice of this meeting has been provided to the public by posting and maintaining the annual notice of regular meetings on the bulletin board of the municipal building, by mailing the annual notice of regular meetings for 2015 to the News Record and Star Ledger in December 2014, and by filing said notice in the office of the Township Clerk.
Brownlee?
Here.
Mrs. Larrier?
Here.
Mrs. Leventhal? Here. Mr. Ryan?
Here.
Mayor DeLuca.
Here.
Whereas Chapter 231, Public Laws of 1975, commonly known as the Open Public Meetings Act, requires that all meetings of public bodies be open to the public, and whereas Section 7 provides that the governing body has the discretion to permit, prohibit, or regulate the active participation of the public at any meeting, and whereas the governing body to comply with this provision, this act, same time to conduct its business in an orderly and expeditious manner, now therefore be it resolved by the Township Committee, Township of Maplewood, does hereby prohibit, except as set forth in the formal agenda, active participation in the deliberations of the governing body by the public, and except as otherwise prescribed by law, does limit the public to the observations of the actions and discussions of the governing body at all of its regular and special meetings.
So moved. Second.
Brownlee?
Yes.
Mrs. Larrier?
Yes.
Mrs. Leventhal?
Yes.
Mr. Ryan?
Yes.
Mayor DeLuca.
Yes, thank you very much. Welcome to our meeting of February 17th. Sorry for the temperature, but we had a boiler problem in this building today, and this room just takes a long time to heat up. So, not to mention we also had a phone problem today too, right?
Yes.
Today was not a good day.
Not for equipment, anyway.
Right. So I'm going to go through the agenda real quick. We'll have first we'll have our public comment period if you'd like to speak to us on items other than the ordinances on final passage. Then we'll have a presentation to the governing body on Maple Woodstock 2015. We have 4 ordinances on final passage. The first is adopting amendments to the redevelopment plan for the post office rehabilitation area. The second is to amend certain provisions of the home-based business ordinance. The third is to allow temporary sports equipment to be placed in the grass strip next to the curb from April 1st to December 31st. And the fourth is to set wages for part-time and seasonal employees at the Maplewood Recreation Department. For each of those, I will ask if anyone wants to speak. There's a required public hearing when we're considering it on second reading. So I'll ask you if you want to speak, and you can come up and speak on that particular ordinance. We have 4 discussion items. The first is signage in the right-of-way. Second, we'll be talking about our sewer fee for 2015. Third, we'll be discussing 44th Street. We've had a 4-month one-way pilot, and we'll be talking about that. Number 4, we will be talking about the Transportation Trust Fund and whether we want to offer a letter of support. Our consent agenda consists of some resolutions allowing us to purchase products, auto parts, road salt, electronic waste recycling. We'll be approving a contract for that. Bills and claims, we'll be approving those. Recycling contract, minutes of February 3rd, and also a resolution limiting the height of the proposed building at the post office site to 50 feet. And that will really depend on what happens with the ordinance on final passage relative to the post office redevelopment. After the consent agenda, we have another public comment period. We'll have reports from administration, reports from elected officials, and then we will adjourn. I've asked Township Committeewoman and Board of Health President India Larrier to give us an update on the animal control issue.
Yes, thank you, Mayor. At this point, and I did confer with our Township Administrator, Mr. Manning, and I'll have him fill in a little bit also, but at this point, we are looking at receiving, hopefully, an RFP that is done by South Orange to run our animal control office, and hopefully we will have that by the end of the week. Hopefully we will be able to comment on it and tweak it if necessary. Mr. Manning has been in contact with South Orange. He has been in regular meetings with them, and hopefully, I believe we are well on our way to having a plan, a long-term plan for animal control here in Maplewood, led by South Orange as a shared service. Mr. Manning has heard from Associated Humane Societies, and correct me if I'm wrong, Mr. Manning, but there have not been, I think there's only been like 2 or 3 animals that they, 3 animals.
3 animals that...
3 animals that they have been brought from residents in Maplewood. Hopefully, we will have a more in-depth report from them for our Board of Health meeting in 2 weeks from our health officer, but that is where it stands. So I believe we are well on our way to having a good and viable agreement with South Orange for animal control services for our residents as well as South Orange's residents.
Okay, thank you very much.
Thank you.
I also just want to give you an update on the last negotiations with the post office development. I know a lot of you are here for that, and I just want to fill you in so that you're aware of where we are in our discussions with the developer prior to coming up here. We have spoken with the developer about reducing the height of the building, and that really has been from comments that you've made here and also comments we received from the Post Office Redevelopment Design Committee of the Maplewood Village Alliance. And they asked the developer to consider eliminating 1 story of residential units. The developer has agreed to eliminate 1 story of residential units. He will build a building that meets the plan as it exists right now that was adopted back in 2013, and that is 45 feet from the average grade. And what that means is that the building at the corner of Maplewood Avenue and Rickleton Square, the height of that portion of the building, that 3 stories, will be 35 feet 6 inches. And the height in the back near the Village Coffee Lot in the back, which is the highest point because the land drops, that would be 45 feet 6 inches. There would be no parapet in addition to that, so that would be it. There would be, as permitted in the plan, there would be mechanicals on the roof, and there would be a stair tower on the roof, like many other buildings in Maplewood Village. The total number of apartments would be reduced from 23 to 20. The site plan would continue to have a large plaza at the corner of Rickleton and Maplewood Avenue, and retain the decorative walkway between Maplewood Avenue and the entrance to the train, south tunnel of the train. So that's where we are. There's more to do as far as the design. There's more to do with the Village Alliance Design Review Committee and the Planning Board, and so that's the current situation with the negotiations with the developer. So with that, I'm going to ask if there's anyone who would like to speak to the Township Committee, if they'd come up and give us your name and address, if you would.
Good evening, Mayor DeLuca, members of the Township Committee. For the
Good
record,
evening.
I'm Deborah Collins, Director of Small Business Development and Affirmative Action for the County of Essex. We have two announcements this evening. The first is that on behalf of County Executive Joseph N. DiVincenzo Jr., I wish to invite all of you to the annual State of the County Address, which will take place on Monday, February 23rd at 7 p.m. at the Essex County Hospital Center. That's at 204 Grove Avenue in Cedar Grove, New Jersey. If you're interested in attending, we would like you to RSVP. The number to call would be 973-621-4400. That's 973-621-4400. And as a reminder, on Friday, March 6th, we will be hosting a seminar entitled Construction Management Best Practices. That's from 10 a.m. to 12 p.m. at McClune's Boathouse Restaurant, 9 Cherry Lane, West Orange, New Jersey. It's a free program, but space is limited, so we're asking the public to call to reserve a space. And that number is 973-621-2011, 973-621-2011. This constitutes our announcements. Are there any questions or concerns that you'd like me to take back to the county executive?
And I know you've answered this before, but I'm going to ask it again only because I've gotten the question a few times. The construction on South Orange Avenue, the S-curves, we are widening that road, yes? And I had three questions exactly. When is it going to be done? And I understand I said it's in another year, right?
About that, but I will give you a more accurate estimate after I go back to the Public Works Director, because of course we've had weather concerns and other interruptions to the project, so let me get back to you on that.
Thank you.
Thank you.
My pleasure.
Is there anyone else who would like to address the Township Committee?
Good evening, Mayor and Township Committee. I'm Alex Hecht from SEIU 32BJ, a property service workers union representing over 10,000 workers across the state of New Jersey. The Township Committee just finished discussing proposed financial and redevelopment agreements with Avalon Bay communities for the redevelopment of the former PSE&G site. I'm here to give you some more information to consider before you allow Avalon Bay to build in Maplewood, and to emphasize the need to demand better than Avalon Bay's usual practices should you allow the company to build here. As I'll explain in somewhat more detail, Avalon Bay's fire safety and environmental record raises concerns about whether it is a good neighbor. In addition, Avalon Bay has rushed to litigate against local governments, aggressively pursued real estate tax appeals, and hired low-road service contractors who create bad jobs. Our union published a report on the history of Avalon Bay's fire safety issues well before the horrific fire that consumed an Avalon Bay apartment complex in Edgewater last month. The news media reported that due to the lightweight construction materials and cheap construction methods used by Avalon Bay, the fire rapidly consumed all 240 units in the building, permanently displacing around 500 residents. Apparently, the maintenance workers who started the fire never called 911. Unfortunately, this is only one incident in a long string of fires and fire safety violations at Avalon Bay properties. The very same Edgewater complex burned down in 2000, while Avalon Bay was first building it, in a fire that destroyed or damaged dozens of nearby homes. A jury later ruled that Avalon Bay's negligence contributed to the fire. Another Avalon Bay apartment complex, this time in Massachusetts, was destroyed by a fire in 2011. State Fire Department investigators later declared that faulty construction and lack of fire barriers allowed the fire to spread more quickly and contributed to the damage. And in 2012, a fire completely destroyed an Avalon Bay complex under construction in Garden City, New York. The Federal Occupational Safety and Health Administration determined that the blaze was started by an Avalon Bay contracted worker using a torch without a fire watch in violation of federal regulations. Avalon Bay's environmental record should be of particular concern to the Township Committee given the significant groundwater remediation that will be required at the former PSE&G site. In 2012, a regional water control board found that Avalon Bay had allowed oil, waste asphalt, hydraulic fluid, concrete, and foam release agent to pollute the soil surrounding their construction site in Irvine, California. In the same year, Avalon Bay agreed to a settlement with a local environmental commission after the company was charged with allowing sediment and silt from a Massachusetts construction site to flow into nearby wetlands in violation of the state's Wetlands Protection Act. Further, Avalon Bay has repeatedly sued towns in order to get its way. For example, in 2013, Avalon Bay sued Princeton Township after the Princeton Council voted down a proposed Avalon Bay project. They sued Princeton again in 2014 after the city required soil testing following a public outcry over soil contaminants. And after winning a builder's remedy lawsuit for a project in Bloomingdale, New Jersey in 2009, Avalon Bay sued Bloomingdale again in 2011 in an effort to gain more favorable terms for the development's site plan approval. Thank you for your patience. I'm going to skip to my conclusion, and I'll submit a written version of my testimony with a little more detail. Maplewood should seek a different developer for the PSE&G site, and at a minimum should carefully consider whether Avalon Bay deserves this 30-year tax incentive that the Township Committee is considering granting. If Avalon Bay were to develop the site, then Maplewood should not be content with a few minor alterations to the building plan. Maplewood can demand more of Avalon Bay by increasing the pilot payments, demanding robust fire safety measures, and devoting added scrutiny to the company's remediation practices. Thank you, Mayor and Township Committee, for your time.
Is there anyone else who would like to address the Township Committee?
My name is Mary Klurman, and I've come up from Princeton in support of the statement that Alex Hecht just gave of the union. Our experience, I live within 2 blocks of the hospital, and I have a letter here that I've addressed to your mayor, which is signed by other people who are residents also within a few blocks of the hospital site where Avalon Bay is developing a complex for 280 units. As the Maplewood Township Committee discusses proposed financial and redevelopment agreements with Avalon Bay communities for the redevelopment of the PSE&G site, we thought it would be helpful to share our experience with the developer as residents of Princeton, where Avalon Bay plans to build 280 units on the site of a former hospital. All who have signed the letter have lived within a few blocks of the hospital site. Residents spent $150,000 attempting to get Avalon Bay to accommodate neighborhood concerns, including concerns about contaminants such as mercury, barium, dioxins, and furans from one of the hospital's medical waste incinerators, and from other industrial equipment used for decades at the site. When the developer's own consultant noted that he had found problems, a report the developer intended to ignore, we hired an environmental safety expert to examine the site and testify accordingly. When the Princeton Council voted to approve the development agreement, but only with the additional environmental testing, Avalon Bay sued the Township Council and the mayor in Superior Court. It's amazing to me that this developer is able to continue to develop sites anywhere in this country, given their record with fire and contaminants. Currently, Avalon Bay has knocked down the 7-story hospital building that was on the site, and it plans to use the untreated rubble from the hospital walls as fill on the property. The company will then cover the fill with just 4 inches of topsoil, when the recommended coverage for safety for hazardous waste is 2 feet. And the optimum solution is to remove it entirely from any residential site. Given Avalon Bay's disregard for environmental problems and residents' concerns in Princeton, the Maplewood Township Committee should not assume that Avalon Bay will responsibly remediate the significant contamination at the PSE&G site. The company has made clear through close to 2 years of community protest that it will do no more than the minimum and will find ways to do less if it can. I urge you not to accept them.
Thank you. You're going to give that to us?
Yeah, thank you.
You can give it to the clerk. Thank you. Is there anyone else who would like to address the Township Committee? Okay. We're going to close the first public comment period. There's another one coming up later. We're now going to have a presentation on Maple Woodstock.
Who'll be playing lead guitar?
You could just introduce yourselves for the record.
Sure. Good evening, Mayor DeLuca and Town Council. My name is Jim Robertson. I'm here with Kevin Chandler and Jamie Ross. We are all involved in the planning and execution of the Maplewood Music and Arts Festival. We are scheduled for July 11th and 12th this year. Permit has been filed. This is our 12th year of the festival. I'm sure you're familiar with it, but it brings not only music and arts, but also food and kids' activities and so forth to Memorial Hill every year for the last 12 years. We believe it's a great showcase for the community. It remains of and for the community. Most of the merchants and musicians and arts involved are local. Of course, we have some regional representation and some national representation, particularly in the music area. This would be the 4th year that we're seeking to have a beer garden as part of the music festival as well. We've had it for the last 3 years as continued efforts to bring the best festival that we can provide free for the community. I think, again, everybody is most likely familiar with the festival, but we're happy to provide additional details or answer other questions about it.
In the other years that you've had the beer garden, have there been any problems or any controversies or any difficulties that you had to have police intervene?
None whatsoever.
Could you talk about the hours and the location?
Yeah, the location is at the top of the hill. It is separated from the kids' activities. It is fenced in. IDs are checked. There has been police officer present in the beer garden, and the hours have been from 2 in the afternoon until a half hour before the end of the festival.
We should probably make clear that the police officer that's present is present at your expense.
Correct.
I mean, we know that, but it's useful for the public to understand that, I think.
Sure. Thank you.
Anyone have any questions? So we need to grant you permission, is the custom. So I'm going to, if you have nothing more to say, then we'll sit down and we'll get a motion.
May I just ask so what you're asking us to do is grant exactly the same permission that you were granted last year?
Correct.
For the exact same scope, the exact same layout, the exact same rules and regs, the exact same police presence that you pay for?
That's correct. We're representing Drew Dix here, who could not make it. I believe we get a permit from Trenton in addition to this. We do contract with the police again out of our pocket to provide some presence, and so we're asking for exactly the same thing as in years past.
Do you want us to give you more of a hard time because Drew isn't here, or less of a hard time because Drew isn't here?
Okay. Well, thanks for the presentation. Let us discuss it, and we will get back to you. Or you can sit here. We're going to make the decision right now.
Great. Thank you.
Mayor, just to have something to discuss, I would move that we grant the exact same permission for Maplewood Stock this year as we did last year.
Second.
Any discussion? Mr. Bradley?
Same exact request. My answer is going to be the same as it was when the same request was asked about last year. For the benefit of who don't know my stance on this, I continue to maintain that it's not appropriate to serve alcohol at a purportedly family-friendly event. I understand that the area is quote-unquote fenced off. Children are not permitted in. There's people ID'd in order to get into that particular locale, but that still does not obviate the fact that children are at the event and they'll see this and they'll be curious about it. And so I just don't feel that it's appropriate at a family-friendly event, and I will continue to oppose that, and I'll be voting no.
Thank you. Anyone else?
I too will be voting against this, as I have the last 2 years. Not to totally repeat Mr. Brownlee, I also don't think it's appropriate in the park at all to have alcohol. Someone once told me that it's brought anyway, but if it's brought and there's no beer garden, it's illegal. So I don't take that as a reason to allow it. I don't think it's appropriate in the park. I don't think it's appropriate for this event, and I will be voting against it as well.
Anything more?
The only comment I would make is that I remember the first year that we tried this out, there was a lot of reluctance to try it. There were a lot of concerns. And because of that reluctance and because of those concerns, we asked the folks who organized it to pay for a good bit more police presence than they originally submitted was necessary. But we insisted that they do it because we wanted to make sure that there would be no problems. And frankly, it's turned out to not be a problem. I don't have any problem with allowing it or any hesitation with voting in favor of this resolution.
Yes.
Just one additional comment, and obviously I was here at the beginning as well, and I recall that discussion, and my recollection was that at least for the first year, the rationale given for why we should have the beer garden was so that we could make more money so that we could hire better acts. And then when they came to us the second year for a similar permission, and we asked for an accounting of the monies from the first year, and they said that they actually lost money, but they were asking to do it again. And so to me, that the rationale kind of went out the window, because if the original rationale was to make more money and they lost money, why are they asking to do it again? That may have changed the economics over the years, but I do recall that was the beginning. And so to me, the rationale, while stated as to make money to hire better acts, falls pale given the experience the first time around. The rationale was something unstated, which I frankly disagree with. Thank you.
Thank you. Please call the roll. On the motion.
Mr. Brownlee?
No.
Mrs. Larrier?
No.
Ms. Leventhal?
Yes.
Mr. Ryan?
Yes.
Mayor DeLuca?
Yes.
Passes 3-2.
Okay, so you'll just speak to Ms. Fritzen about the arrangements.
He'll be filing a social affair permit for that weekend.
Okay, so now we're going to move into the final passage of 4 ordinances. With each ordinance, we'll read it, we'll make a statement that it's been published, and then I will ask people if they'd like to be heard on the motion. So, and then at the conclusion of that, we'll introduce it, second it, and then we'll have a discussion, and then there'll be a vote on each of the 4 ordinances on second reading. So we have an ordinance on final passage.
Mr. Mayor, item number 7, ordinance on final passage, ordinance number 2766-15, adopting amendments to the redevelopment plan for the post office rehabilitation area. This ordinance will revise the redevelopment plan for the post office rehabilitation area.
This ordinance has been published, copies posted on the bulletin board in the municipal building, and copies made available to the general public in accordance with the law. The time is now open for a hearing. Is there anyone who would like to address this ordinance?
Roy Perfetta, 1 Hickory Drive, Maplewood. I was here 2 weeks ago and I talked about the concept of repurposing the old post office. And I talked about the fact that if we had new windows and new doors and a new facade, that we could turn what I think is rather ugly structure into something quite nice and save the cost of demolition, and that way lower the height and the mass. Now, I'm not going to repeat those arguments. I've made them. You understand them, I'm sure. I do want to make this point, though, about one of my comments. One of the things you said in response was that you received no reuse proposals in response to the redevelopment plan. Well, I don't really think that should have surprised you because although reuse is not prohibited per se in this plan, it's pretty clear that it's not contemplated or encouraged. Here's what your plan says on page 35. It is proposed that the site be completely cleared of existing buildings, parking lots, and other improvements, as well as existing trees and other plantings. The plan proposes a significant change in use over the current conditions, and there is no reason to retain any of the existing structures or vegetation. So, I don't think that the concept of reuse was really ever seriously considered by this body. And I got to tell you that there have been many instances in the past where that hasn't been the case. One that particularly comes to mind was when we talked about the old police station. And Ms. Leventhal, for example, brought to us the concept of reuse. We discussed it quite a lot, a vigorous discussion. Ultimately, I thought, and so did the majority of the Township Committee, that it was not a candidate for reuse because primarily the rooms were too small, and the rooms were too small because of the girders that were in the corners of the rooms, and these were support for the building, and to remove that would have been a major cost. So I just didn't think it was a candidate for reuse. But that was the kind of consideration we gave to the question. And the fact that it hasn't been discussed this time leads me to wonder about the health of sustainability these days in this governing body. I'll say to you that one thing you could do to make sure that sustainability is still a priority for you with respect to this development is to make sure that the developer complies with your green criteria in the redevelopment plan. Make them do the important things, not just the easy things to get points. Make them do the important things. For example, your plan encourages the use of solar panels. That's on page 26 of your plan. Make them do that, because this, as I'm sure you know, is a perfect location for solar power. There are no trees around that would affect it. There's plenty of sun, no shade, and there's no real cost to doing this, though you'll hear differently from the developer. The fact is, as you and we all know, because we've discussed this, if you do a solar installation pursuant to a power purchase agreement, there's no upfront cost to the developer, none at all. They get the tax benefits, and they sell the electricity to the investor, which is a third entity, sells the electricity cheap to the developer. And if, on the other hand, the developer owns the panels, then these days, because components for solar installations are so cheap, the payback period is quicker. I mean, the fact of the matter is now, I don't know how many people realize it because it was a while ago and you don't see them, we have solar panels on the new police station. Those panels are now producing free electricity for that police station. That's the kind of thing that we should have in this town wherever we can. Now, before I leave this topic of reuse, I want to say one other thing about it. The redevelopment plan says, as you well know, that the design guidelines of the Maplewood Village Alliance are to be followed. And that's on page 14 of your plan. One of these guidelines relates to demolition. These guidelines were enacted in 1999 as part of a Township Committee ordinance. You should be aware of this, because I don't see how it's not going to come up. There is a guideline called demolition, and here's what it says. Except in instances where the Uniform Construction Code requires the demolition of a fire-damaged building, no building within the district, that's the Maplewood Village Alliance Special Improvement District, shall be demolished without its owner demonstrating significant financial hardship. That's a guideline which your plan says is incorporated by reference. All right, what does this mean? Well, in this context, I think it can certainly mean that you have to show that reuse causes the town hardship, some kind of hardship, financial hardship, in comparison to new construction. And that could be a high hurdle. Keep it in mind. I mean, that's in there for a reason. You know what the reason why it's in there is because the people want to preserve the look of the village. And by the way, those provisions were not drafted only for Maplewood. Those provisions came from ordinances from other towns. It's either from a model ordinance of the League of Municipalities or from other towns. But we didn't, that wasn't drafted from whole cloth for this town only. So there's some precedent in it, and one could look it up and find out how it's been interpreted. And now another comment you made 2 weeks ago was that you thought that this new building was important because it would give the village an economic shot in the arm. And it's also in your plan on page 2. I agree with that. I mean, that's a laudable purpose, no doubt about that. But in my opinion, if you're bringing in more shops on that first floor to compete with existing businesses, that's not going to be helpful to the economic vitality of the business, of the village. We don't need more shops. In my opinion, what we need in the village is more shoppers. And there's a way to do that. And you could do it by serving another Maplewood priority, which Ms. Leventhal and Mrs. Lario, you know all about, is wellness. This is the way it could be done. You could devote that entire first floor, fitness, and as a permitted use in your redevelopment plan, both on pages 18 and 23, you talk about fitness centers. Now, if you had things like exercise rooms, yoga, physical therapy, massage institutions, if you had those there, then what people would do when they're done with their activities would be go to the village and spend their money. That's how I think you infuse the village with economic vitality. Bring them to the village for something active, something fun, something like wellness, and then encourage them to spend their money there. Don't bring them there to buy some other stuff, which is competing with another shop down the street. It's not going to be, that's not the right synergy. It wouldn't be helpful. And you could do something else as part of this that many people in Maplewood have wanted to do for a long time. You could bring a small fencing club and put it right in the heart of the village on that site. You all know that Maplewood is the fencing capital of New Jersey. And there's no mystery as to why that is. It's because our high school team is so good. If the girls don't win the state championship one year, the boys do, and sometimes they both win it. So everybody knows of Maplewood as the center of fencing and fencing instruction. The New Jersey Fencing Alliance is now in the old Verizon building on the other side of Springfield Avenue. It's a little bit hard to get to. It's not doing too well right now, quite frankly. But if we had a small club in the village, we could get, and I'm told this from people who know, we could get the best coaches around because of the centrality of the location in Maplewood, because of the vitality of it being in the middle of a commercial economic center, and because of the proximity to the railroad, which could bring people here in a sustainable, quick way. I'm told, and I believe it to be so, that people would flock here. If we had these kind of coaches, they'd flock here to take lessons. And there'd be a lot of people who would come just for their recreation, because there's a lot of people, especially in New Jersey, where there's more fencers per square mile than any other state in the Union, who used to fence in high school or in college and don't have the opportunity wherever they live now. They could come here and do that. They do it at night, for example, after work, and then they'd spend their money in the village. They go to the bars, they go to the restaurants, they go to the movies, they go to the pizza parlors. they go to the shops and buy stuff. That's the kind of synergy that I think you could establish. I'm not an expert on the fencing community or on fencing economics. Other people are. There's some folks here tonight who I think will speak on this, and I ask you to listen to them and hear what they have to say. So, for what it's worth, here's my advice to you tonight. Continue to serve the cause of sustainability. Continue to serve the cause of wellness. Continue to serve the cause of economic vitality. But don't serve the cause of pure developer profit. Thank you.
Anyone else want to address this ordinance?
Hi, David Humer, 26 Nelson Place. As I said 2 weeks ago, I think you should vote no on this. I want to follow up on some comments that I heard from the Township Committee, which I thought were appropriate and thoughtful and deserved a follow-up. I want to point out at the beginning, I appreciate Mr. Brownlee's consideration of this, and will point out that when I investigated the history of the redevelopment plans, all of them originally contemplated King's would be the anchor tenant. Regardless of the merits of that, that is no longer the reality. And I think that it is appropriate for you to reconsider the redevelopment in light of the fact that the central anchor of the original redevelopment plan is now not a participant. And that's a reason to vote no on this. Mr. Ryan and Ms. Larrier referenced property tax relief. It's appropriate that I don't know the value of the project, but I did the arithmetic. The state reports every August on the equalized valuation of all the properties in every town in the state. Maplewood has about $3,405 million worth of property. If this is a $10 million project, and I have no idea what the numbers are, but I'm going to plug that number in, the property tax relief is about 1/3 of 1%. For every $333, roughly, or $340 of property taxes people pay now, they'll pay $1 less. The number one component of the redevelopment plan is that you maximize the value of this property to the township. I would urge you not to consider that in financial terms, given the negligible effect of property tax relief, given the paucity of public property in this town, and you are to be commended for adding to that at the Woodland. I don't want to neglect that. That was a wise, very foresighted decision that you made. You should do the same thing here. Developing this property privately, enabling a developer to make money, enabling a few people to live in Maplewood in addition to what it is now, and providing negligible tax relief is not maximizing the value of this piece of land that is now publicly held, has been for decades, and has many potential uses that maximize the value to the 25,000 people who live here beyond what you've proposed. Please vote no.
Anyone else want to address the Township Committee?
Good evening. Julie Martini at 12 Briarcliff Court. I'm a little confused. I read your redevelopment plan with the amendments, and the height was limited at 53 feet, I believe, and now it's at 50 feet. Can you explain the discrepancy, please?
The height now is 45 feet. The original amendment was to raise it to 53.
Right.
That was changed to 50. So what's on the table right now is changing it from 45 to 50.
And is that from which point?
The average grade.
The average grade. Okay, so that's somewhere between, okay. All right, thank you very much.
Anyone else want to address the Township Committee?
My name is John Dilley, and I live at 13 Everett Place. My wife Eileen and I have lived in Maplewood and owned the Bee and Thistle for almost 42 years. The village has changed a lot over that time frame, but it has been and still remains the heart of Maplewood. I'm concerned about the post office redevelopment and the impact on the vitality and charm of our lovely village. And I know firsthand that a growing number of other merchants and neighbors share these same concerns. I used to be a member of the board of the Village Alliance a number of years ago. And I'm reminded of a presentation that was given to the Alliance board by a couple of consultants that were hired by the township back then. Maybe this is like 8 or 10 years ago. These two gentlemen came to the Alliance to make a presentation. They prefaced their formal comments to the Alliance board with some informal comments, the gist of which follows. They had performed a number of consulting engagements throughout the state of New Jersey and wanted us to know that in general, the intention of these other townships and municipalities was to develop a downtown, quote, just like Maplewood Center. They praised our center, thoroughly complimented the town's efforts to continue to help make it successful, and seriously recommended that extreme care be taken not to upset what other towns seem to consider as their model. These consultants' comments should be taken into consideration before we embark on a plan that Mr. Profeta has deemed will place a behemoth in our center. The challenge that remains is how to proceed without eradicating the charm we all appreciate and that was discovered by those two consultants. There are several issues about which I'm concerned, and I would ask that the Township Committee provide information and solutions before these challenges, before approving the plan, and certainly before completing negotiations with any developer are completed and agreements signed. As a merchant of 42 years in this very center, I remain surprised that merchants have not been formally asked to play more of a role in the analysis of alternatives and the resultant decision-making for this endeavor. One of my concerns is parking, the elephant in the room. The parking problem has existed for a long time and continues to impact merchants. After 42 years of this, we know all too well the comments of our customers when they come in. My God, I can't, how do you park in this town? Difficulty in finding a parking place is heard daily. With the addition of new apartments and new retail businesses, it seems to be that the parking issue can only get worse, not better. What is the detailed plan to resolve the current parking issue? It's been studied to death, and we still are suffering from a lack of parking. I heard rumors now that there's parking being planned for the basement of this new building. What about the additional burden of parking in the center for their visitors and for their customers? There was a lot of discussion of new business, and Mr. Profeta already discussed that, and the idea of using the reuse argument and bringing in things like the New Jersey Fencing Alliance and having all these different things. The idea is to figure out how to bring people to Maplewood, not figure out how to put more shops in the town to compete with what's already there. We've learned to live with the post office building, albeit unattractive, but its footprint is established. Why does it have to be torn down? Was reuse ever considered? And Mr. Profeta has already addressed that. With an attractive facade, it could be a success like the Women's Club, recently written up in the Village Green as having brought revenue into Maplewood. I believe the original RFP sent to contractors for bids, the demolishing of the post office was required. Why was reuse of the building not seriously considered as an alternative? A number of things have already been discussed by Mr. Profeta, but I'd like to summarize and say that I hope sanity prevails, lest our behemoth has the same effect on our village's ambience as that of a boulder in a fish pond.
Thank you. Anyone else want to address the Township Committee?
Good evening. Inda Sexer, Euclid Avenue. Before I even start the remarks that I was planning on saying, we need to back up the truck for a second here. When this development plan was written, the maximum height to the roof without the parapet was 45 feet. 4 weeks ago, you announced that you wanted it to be 53 feet. 2 weeks ago, it was down to what, 50? A week ago, we were told that 45 feet was negotiated with the removal of a story of the building, and it was announced as a great victory. Tonight, very quickly, you announced that it's back up to 50 feet. You're going to have to take some time and explain it to us, because this is like being on a rubber band. I mean, we originally, a group of us said originally that we felt that 45 feet was too tall and that the building was too massive in bulk, and for almost 2 years we've been asking that this building be smaller, and yet every 2 weeks we come in here and it's growing by different proportions. I don't understand. Last week it was a great victory that it was going to be 45 feet. How did we get to 50 feet? And I see that that's on the consent agenda, and we've been wondering why it's on the consent agenda. Can you explain that to us, please?
The plan, the amendment that we're considering makes the average grade, the height, 50 feet. If that plan passes, there's a parallel resolution that would urge the planning board to not go beyond the 50 feet. If the ordinance doesn't pass, then the resolution is moot.
And then you go back to the 45 feet.
That's the underlying redevelopment plan, yes.
So if the amendment doesn't pass, then the building
45 feet.
maxes out at 45 feet.
Yes.
Unless something else changes, depending on review. Okay. Now I'll say what I was going to say. Thank you for clarifying that. On February 3rd, last time we were here, I asked a number of questions and entered them for the record. These questions were not answered. I'm going to review them, and hopefully we can get some answers, and they follow up on some of the other remarks that we've heard. Was a feasibility study done regarding reuse and repurposing of the post office building, encompassing options for alteration, renovation, and addition, vertically or horizontally? I still haven't found any evidence that such a feasibility study was done. Since this has gone unanswered, I assume the answer is no. So that begs the question, why was this not done? Such a study could inform not only the work required for alternate uses for the building, but for the financial options for retaining and/or leasing. Some who have done such an analysis have stated that leasing the building may bring into the town as much or more income as this entire proposed project will create in tax revenue while continuing to maintain a large investment in historic property for the town. Second question, were opportunities provided for any private entities to purchase and reuse the building as opposed to a developer? Since this has gone unanswered, I assume that the answer is no. And again, why not? 3, based on the information I presented at the last meeting regarding the rehab study and also the subsequent submittal to the DCA, which appear to be in conflict with one another, is there really any sound basis substantiating demolition of the post office building, either from a structural or legal point of view? Since this has gone unanswered, I assume the answer is no. Now, a number of additional comments and questions to be entered for the record. A day or two after the last TC meeting, February 3rd, Township Public Work employees were observed digging in the parking lot behind the shop south of the rehab site. In the parking lot behind Lorena's, the sushi place, and not within the designated rehab area. For those workers in town, it is not known where the town's water and sewer lines are located. They said they were digging holes to search for them. The workers indicated that they are searching for them, that they are probably farther south, closer to the toy store, that is, farther away from the rehab site. About a month ago, and prior to observing holes being dug, I called the town's Public Works Department and asked if there's a map showing the infrastructure that is indicated in the rehab study. I described in detail what I was seeking. No one there could provide me with information at all. With that and the newer info about the work in town, I asked, is it true that no one knows where the sewer and water lines are? And if this is so, how can you base an area in need of rehabilitation study on the infrastructure, sewer, and water when you don't know if these are even incidental to the subject area, and indeed you don't even know where they are, period? Further, the May 2011 rehab study indicates a program of rehabilitation in the subject area. There's no recommendation for, or even an option for, demolition in that May 2011 study. The redevelopment plan does not incorporate the intent for a program of rehabilitation, though the May 2011 study was used as the legal basis legitimizing and triggering this entire project. It is the designation of area in need of rehabilitation that paved the way for the redevelopment of the site and thus the redevelopment plan. However, instead of incorporating a program of rehabilitation for the site, the redevelopment plan narrowly indicates the opposite approach, full demolition, that the site be razed, including all vegetation, as Fred pointed out, indicated on page 35. The issue of demolition is not addressed or explained in the redevelopment plan. It is merely stated as a given with no substantiation. Because this is not addressed, the issue of the need for demolition needs to be referred back to the Township zoning and development regulations, likely the Maplewood Village Alliance and or the Planning Board. That's what's indicated on page 12 of the redevelopment plan. Finally, the RFP issued for the site is at cross-purpose to the redevelopment plan in that it removed the myriad of uses allowed in the redevelopment plan and distilled it down to requiring only apartments and a grocery, specifically indicating King's, plus the option for incidental retail, excluding all other possible uses originally allowed in the redevelopment plan. Why was this done, and is this legally correct? Regarding our green town, the master plan's historic preservation plan element discusses the relationship between historic preservation and sustainability. As discussed in section 4.6 of the HPPE, there are economic and environmental costs associated with the demolition and replacement of existing buildings. It states that while promotion of energy efficient buildings should be encouraged, the greenest building is often an existing one, and that these considerations should be applied to all existing buildings and not just those considered historic. Because of all the issues mentioned and more, we request that the Township Committee move to amend the redevelopment plan to allow for soliciting options for repurposing and reusing the building and set a timetable for this sorely needed detour in the process. We request that the Township Committee take a break on negotiations with the developer and have a moratorium to consider these wider options. Thank you.
Thank you. Anyone else want to address the Township Committee?
Good evening, Dave Helmkamp, 571 Prospect Street. I sense it's time for a little brevity, and I will be brief, and also a little levity. So I'll talk about balloons. Another balloon was placed in town, this time reflecting the current zoning with a 45-foot roof height. I've seen a lot of balloons in my time, and this one looks pretty much the same as the ones I've seen over the last few weeks. For me, and for many people, it has become a red flag more than just a red balloon. For me in particular, I look at it 24 inches in diameter, and I think if that can catch my attention so easily, a study of the actual structure, the rectangular box 100 feet on the side, should be done. You know, of course, I've asked for studies, and as the expression goes, I expect them yesterday. Doing so is standard practice on projects of this type. I feel it is a mistake. I think it is mismanagement to not be doing so before contemplating a contract with any developer. It certainly isn't a statement regarding JMF properties in particular. It's just standard practice. Thank you.
Thank you. Anyone else want to address the Township Committee?
Bill Vaquera, 21 Sagamore Road, Maplewood. Wanted to just say a few words in support of the concept that Mr. Profeta spoke about earlier today, namely the idea of bringing wellness and wellness-related businesses to the village. I think he put it well in talking about bringing shoppers rather than shops, but I also specifically wanted to endorse the idea of considering a fencing club in the village. As some of you know, I have 4 daughters that are all fencers. They have fenced at just about every level, from local youth to national and international. 2 are collegiate fencers, and 2 currently fence for Columbia High School. As a result of their involvement in fencing, I've been involved in the sport for about 10 years. I've met a lot of people, learned a lot about the sport, sat on a couple of committees at the national and state level. and I've grown to have a great affinity for the sport, and I think it would be a great fit for the village. Having a fencing facility in the village, I think would be complementary rather than competing with local businesses. Would bring fencers and their parents to a place where they otherwise would have no reason to be. If you understand the demographics of the fencing community, I think you would also find that these are people that are well worth trying to attract to the village, and they're very likely to be shoppers and diners of local businesses. In addition, while fencing might, from your perspective, be viewed as a relatively small sport, I can tell you in New Jersey it's huge, particularly in Northeast New Jersey. There are over 2,000 fencers in Northern New Jersey registered with the U.S. Fencing Association. On top of that, there are recreational fencers and high school fencers that might not have registered, so I have no way of counting those. I've also counted over 50 clubs in the state of New Jersey, and it seems from my perspective like every other week there is a club being opened somewhere in New Jersey. It's a growing and popular sport, and one that colleges, and for the most part excellent colleges, view as an attractive extracurricular activity for students. I have had an opportunity to speak to a friend of mine who happens to be a U.S. national team coach. He's been involved in the sport for over 30 years. He's also owned his own club and helped many others build clubs. So I went to him as a resource to get an idea from him as to the viability. He's familiar with Maplewood Village. He's been here with me many times, and he thought there would be no problem attracting very, very high-level coaches, some who might want to relocate to Maplewood themselves, raise their families here, and run the club. The club typically in a village, in the Maplewood Village, I estimate would be somewhere between 5,000 and maximum 10,000 square feet. So I think it could reasonably fit within whatever you might do with the post office building, and still allow for other related, wellness-related businesses that might be complementary as well. I'll offer myself as a resource if it's an idea of any interest in making introductions to other people or any other details that I can provide. I'd be more than happy to help as well going forward, and I'll offer that to you. And I'd be remiss, since I'm here, to not mention that the Columbia High School girls fence in the semifinals of the state tomorrow at 5 o'clock at the New Jersey Fencing Alliance. Thank you.
Thank you. Anyone else?
Eric Hammerberg, 93 Oakview, Maplewood. Before I go into my talk, I need to add on to Bill's push for the girls. The boys are fencing in the semifinals states Thursday evening at 5 o'clock up at NJFA. So I'm an architectural designer specializing in historic preservation and the father of two fencers and a late to the sport fencer myself. So I'll start with the architectural side of it. I had always put down the post office building until I had a chat with Fred about adaptive reuse, but you need to look at it as a repurposing, as he's been saying it. Stripping off the facade, you're starting with the structural frame, the floors and the roof, foundation. That's a whole lot of cost in a building that's built very robust and could certainly take additional modifications, but I think if you open your mind up to that, there's a lot that could happen with that. I'm really encouraged by the developer's proposal to reduce the height and to really put the pencil to the paper again and again to try and satisfy what the Village Alliance Design Review Committee has been pushing for. Like I said, I'm very encouraged by it, but if it doesn't work out, I strongly encourage you to revisit or to come back and visit this adaptive reuse proposal. Some of the things that have come to my mind, I mean, this is what I'm not a design architect, I'm more of a technical architect bordering on engineering. but I'm in that world every day. That's all I've been doing my whole career. Things like opening up foundation wall to allow parking subgrade in the existing building. It's a 16,000 square foot building, so if you're looking at the use of the building, there's a lot of subdivisions within the building that could accommodate multiple uses. A 10,000 square foot fencing club has been talked about, is a very comfortable, very frankly, a nice large size fencing club. So as Bill was saying, in the 5,000 to 10,000 foot range, you have a very nice facility. And still a lot more room for something else, and probably the ability to add a second floor to the building. I will also go off on slightly a different tangent relative to the fencing club. My two sons took up fencing. One of the other things is, all these people that fence, and you understand that we had, the Ibtihaj Muhammad is now has been on the national team for years, and she is targeted for the Olympic team, right? So we're not talking about just really good fencers. We're talking the world-class fencers. And all of these fencers have come to the sport on their own in this town. So there's something in the water that we're doing here, because, and I frankly think that it has to do with the lifestyle that we encourage, the education, the parental involvement with their children. I think it all really comes together, and that's the kind of people that fencers are. As Bill's been in the sport a little longer. I've been doing it as a parent for about 7 years. So, but one of the things that does happen is when you become an excellent fencer, super advanced, relatively elite fencer, they all tend to go into New York City. I don't think that's a bad thing. I look at the ability to have a fencing club right next to the train tracks. My son goes into the city all the time. I mean, he's there all the time. He's there right now, I know. Fencing. And, but having that adjacency to the train tracks and New York City will bring will definitely bring fencers to the club. But will also allow them the freedom of thinking about, am I good enough to take it to the city and fence there? Because there you have the elite of all of the New York area. You have the Westchester, you have Long Island, all the 5 boroughs of New York City. There's a lot of really good fencers there. And you have Columbia University, NYU, Hunter, and some other schools that have fencing, St. John's. I mean, these are the highest level NCAA fencing programs that there are. So I wouldn't envision a fencing club to be able to be the end all for everybody in fencing. NJFA has been a great place for starting kids fencing, starting elderly people start fencing, and to let them grow and to go and become as good of a fencer as they can be. As a parent and the husband of the co-president of the Fencing Parents Association for Columbia for a couple of years, I can't tell you how many parents come to me, their kids have started fencing at freshman year and they're rounding into their junior year, and they ask me, should my kid go to the city because he's getting a little bit boxed in with who he's able to fence with on a weekly basis? And my answer to them is, you have to answer that yourself. The maturity of the fencer, because they have to be able to go in by themselves generally, all those kinds of things. But if you were to have a club that had built relationships with the elite clubs in the city, then you're talking about a feeder network of really beginner, intermediate, advanced intermediate here, and then if they become good enough, they could start going into the city, they could go in as a group, they could still stay a member here. I can tell you that my son is at Fencers Club, and the woman that manages the Fencers Club knows every college coach personally and can guide can guide fencers on where the right school for them is, because she did it for us. So fencing does build a strong person, and it is something to think about, but also the rest of the building. We're talking 5,000 to 10,000 square feet. You're only talking a third of the building if you add another story to it. As everybody else has been saying, a wellness facility of physical therapy, maybe some health food things, but there's a lot of things that could synergistically work in that neck of the town and just add to the town and not take anyone's business away from them. So, thank you.
Thank you. Anyone else want to address the Township Committee?
Township Committee. I'm Eric Shorter, 180 Jacoby Street. I wasn't intending to speak, but having heard everyone else, I decided I wanted to share just a quick anecdote. I'll keep it brief. As I was on my way to just listen this evening, I told my daughters why I was going to listen to the committee, and I discussed the proposed site redevelopment, and the first words out of all three mouths were, why don't they put in a recreation facility? All of the kids would love that. And hearing about the fencing and hearing about the wellness and hearing about the need to bring shoppers and not shops into the village and keep the vibrancy of what makes this town so great alive could easily be solved through recreation, whether it be fencing or wellness or something that gives the kids, the children, our future, access to extracurricular activities, not just consumerism. I'd also say, as a member of the Environmental Advisory Committee, that sustainability is key. If there's any way to reuse, adaptable reuse is key. The demolition and the wholesale destruction of the property, so to speak, will only open a can of worms. If there is any way to have the developers really analyze adaptable reuse, that's key. And then the sustainability issues. I mean, there's no reason why we shouldn't demand the highest levels of sustainability at this point in our time. And that's it.
Thank you. Anyone else want to address the Township Committee on this ordinance?
Dave Helmkamp, Prospect Street. So I've moved on to other numbers at this point, no more elevations for the time being. I spent some time with assessments, comparative properties, and rental rates. I have a slide that, or a slideshow, I should say, that goes on in considerable detail, and I'm very happy to share that. My intention is to add an audio narrative to it so that it's easier to digest. In the meantime, I'm happy to, of course, discuss the methods that I used over the last couple of weeks to think about these numbers. For tonight, I want to just run through some results that are estimates, but estimates that I feel are very realistic. First, the topic of annual tax savings for the average homeowner. The median house price is currently about $400,000, I believe. I took as an example Station House, currently appraised at $7.1 million. As a benchmark, I don't believe the project in town could assess that high based on the elimination of a floor, but that's yet to be seen. The change in local taxes that median homeowner would see is in the neighborhood of $10. Other speakers have said similar things. Dave Humer mentioned a percentage. This means that for a savings of $10 on an ongoing basis, or not, in other words, if you forego the savings, the site could support a park, a church, an indoor gym, as we've heard about, a grocery store, offices and studio space, an indoor farmer's market, a transit village with 20 units and 5 rentals. In fact, if you could fit it, you could put 2 transit villages with 20 units and 5 retail units and still only see a $20 savings for that median home. So that's all good news. We can afford many options, and I think tonight we've heard many options. The average taxpayer, I think, would be willing to forfeit that $10 or less for any number of the concepts that you heard about tonight. That $10 is 1/3 of what we pay into the open space fund. And it's 1/10 or 20th of the variation in the taxes every year that you guys work so hard to control, and that's certainly not a complaint. I mean, I think you've done a fine job controlling the taxes, but you can't get them anywhere near the $10 increase per year. So So I asked myself, is the current proposal a good idea? Will it make a contribution in some way as good or better than any of the other choices that we have? Will it add to surrounding property values or increase business for existing businesses more than other proposals? I don't know. I don't know. It needs to be thought about. Might it detract from more than other options? Well, we know that realtors say Maplewood Village sells houses, 250 of them a year. We also know that currently retail establishments turn over more often than we believe they should in town. There's something going on there. They're not, you know, some are clearly very healthy and other spaces see a lot of turnover. In rough terms, if the property values within 1/8 of a mile of Rickleton Park were to drop 10% because a mistake was made, that would be $12.5 million of assessment. That's approximately double what we could hope to gain from a new development at this site. Now, if you're risk adverse at all, you don't go down that path. That's just within roughly 1/8 of a mile. I believe it was Inwood Place, not Inwood Place, the street that the new post office location is at, north to Beach Place or Beach Avenue, up Maplewood Avenue, and up to Ridgewood. Those properties in that vicinity are worth about $125 million. That drops 10% and you've wiped out the benefit of a new project. So again, it all means that we have choices. And finally, I looked at whether or not there's a benefit to selling the property. The property, as I understand it, is essentially a gift to the township, appraised at $1.7 million. We just came upon it as a result of agreements that were made 50 or 60 years ago, and it's now reverted back to us. That gift, in recent years, I'm told, brought in $185,000 in rental income annually. That's an 18.5% return on its value. If any of us, anyone here or you guys, woke up one morning and received a $1.7 million gift that was returning 18.5%, the last thing on your mind would be to sell it. So strictly as an investor, and it's not inappropriate for a township or government entity to invest in real estate in this sense, someone ought to look at that and ask, hey, all we got to do is find someone else like the Postal Service, and we're in pretty good shape. A project like Station House brings in currently $260,000 a year in taxes based on its newest assessment. It's not clear that a 3-story building at this location in the village would produce that much in taxes. So the potential income from this site is tax income from this site is approximately the same whether it is rented or demolished and replaced with a new structure. The third option would be to improve or expand the current structure, in which case it's likely the rental income would exceed what we'd likely collect in taxes from the new development. So again, it appears we have choices. And finally, if the structure is demolished, we lose the value of the building, currently assessed at $980,000, nearly $1 million. And we incur costs to demolish it and fully remediate the site. So compared to an asset that is currently returning 18.5%, we're looking at eliminating $1 million of that asset and spending money to do so. So there are a lot of numbers involved and approaches that can be considered here. None of them point squarely in one direction. As others have said, I think it's time to step back and to ask, what are we trying to achieve with this property? Thank you.
Anyone else want to address the Township Committee? Seeing no one, will close the hearing on this ordinance. We need an ordinance to move forward. I mean, a motion to move forward.
move this ordinance be adopted as a whole and the clerk be directed to publish the same as a passed ordinance in the Maplewood South Orange News Record according to law. Second.
Discussion?
I think it would just be useful, Mayor, before anybody makes any comments, just to be clear. Mr. Humer, I think it was, urged us to vote no on this ordinance, but I think we should just be clear to folks who might not understand exactly where we are. You know, we have an ordinance on final passage. We're either going to vote yes or vote no. If we vote yes, we've amended the redevelopment plan as has been discussed, I think it's fair to say, to death. And if we vote no, it doesn't mean that we're not, that we're voting against any redevelopment. It simply means that we're voting no on this amendment and we revert back to the existing plan.
Correct.
So, you know, if we want to have some kind of a separate conversation about other direction, I guess we could have that conversation, but at the moment, you know, the question at hand is, should the plan be amended or not?
That's correct.
And it seems to me that based on our conversations, you know, we had a lot of public discussion, we had a lot of feedback from people. I think we had a very good session with the developer and with his architect. We got a sense of what they envisioned their view of the new building would look like, and we didn't like it. And the public didn't like it. The developer heard from the Township Committee that the developer didn't like it, that the folks didn't like it, but I think the developer was in the room and wasn't surprised to hear that. That's why the developer came back and said, I should make the building smaller, you're right. And in fact, if the current design as described to us is in fact smaller and fits within the envelope of the existing plan, then I think it's appropriate to vote down the amendment, and I'm going to do that, or I'm going to vote no on it. I think we should be clear to people that, you know, this is an ongoing process. There's a detailed review of a modified design that's going to be held by the Maplewood Village Alliance, and there's a lot more steps to go between now and any potential contract and any potential sale. It's not as though a decision is being made tonight. I would say in response to, I think Mr. Hammerberg probably, I think, said it best, that he said, and I think I agree with him, that he's encouraged by the developer's willingness to reduce the height, and he's encouraged by the developer's willingness to do what the Village Alliance Design Review Committee does. But notwithstanding all that, if this doesn't work out, we should certainly consider reuse. If this doesn't work out, it's as if we're restarting. And I would think all options like that would be on the table. And just simply in response to the things that some earlier commenters made, if somebody had come in and submitted a proposal that reused the building, we would have considered it. Remember, the proposal that we're considering right now, the notion of a smaller footprint of a building and parking behind the building and a new traffic lane and all that, was not originally considered by anybody. One of the responders came back with that idea, and everybody got a look at it and said it was a great idea. If anybody had submitted a proposal to reuse the building, I'm certain it would have been considered. But the fact remains that it wasn't. You know, and a future discussion is another time. But I think to suggest that we wouldn't have been open to it or wouldn't have welcomed it, I think is just not true. So, long comments short. I'm going to vote against amending the ordinance, and will revert the plan to its previous form.
Any other comments?
There were 4 amendments. 2 have to do with the design. How do we handle?
The others we will handle through, if this moves forward, the The ones about the lots are just housekeeping, doesn't really need to be in there, and the affordable housing thing can be dealt with in the future based on a contract, and we can make a change before the closing. Mrs. Larrier.
Yes, thank you. I too will be voting against the amendments only because of the willingness to make the changes that we've asked for, and now it seems as though at least one of the amendments we don't even need any longer. And we can fix the affordable housing issue in a different way. I would like to point out that I'm not entirely sold on the fact that just because every member of this community doesn't see $100 or $5,000 or whatever in their taxes back to them, that this becomes not a good project. That the benefit of this project, I believe, while the tax revenue is certainly a plus and a biggie for me, that's not the only benefit of this project, and I think we have to remember that. I am actually very enthused about some of the suggestions we've had about putting fitness into the building, and well, being a fencer myself, of course, I'm biased towards fencing, but I like the idea of bringing shoppers as opposed to shops. However, we have to get the building built first before we can decide what's going on that first floor. So I'm looking to move forward. I'm encouraged by Mr. Forgione's willingness to work with us, and I would like everyone to remember that this is just a plan. This is just a blueprint, and this isn't the building. So the building is supposed to be built within these parameters, and so long as we have good parameters, which I believe we have without the amendments, we should get a good building. I'm not convinced that scrapping this and repurposing the building is the way to go. In fact, I'm absolutely against that. Unless this, as Mr. Ryan said, unless this falls through, then we can revisit that. But to just say, let's scrap this and repurpose the building, I'm afraid I can't go along with that, especially because there are still remediation that has to happen, there's still construction that has to happen, there's still considerable costs that come with that, and considerable disruption in the village. And we still would have to hammer out what that building would look like. So I don't think it really gains us anything to scrap this. So I'll be voting against the amendments, but I certainly would want to go forward. Thank you.
Anyone else? Mr. Brownlee?
Yes, I voted against this 2 weeks ago, and I'll be voting against it again this evening, although for somewhat different reasons, much of which have been stated already. I did want to say, though, that, you know, that this is a complex situation. A couple things struck me in some of the remarks that were said tonight, and you know, I just offered these as some of the food for thought as you think about us in this situation, trying to assess what next moves to make. One of the speakers spoke about the fact that for many years, and I'm sure many of us can attest to this ourselves, that parking is a challenge in the downtown area. And I thought it intriguing that some of the remarks subsequent to that, Mr. Profeta spoke about more shoppers, not more shops. And obviously a number of the speakers tonight spoke about perhaps having a fencing club or something like that. And one of the question that immediately kind of popped in my mind is, okay, well, where do they park? I mean, if we don't have enough room for the shoppers that are there now, and we're going to bring in more shoppers, where are these shoppers going to park? Similarly with a fencing club, you know, if we have a parking situation now, which is a challenge, and we put a fencing club in the town. If we haven't addressed the parking situation, will we not have exacerbated the problem by bringing that in? I'm not saying that that's not a mitigatable issue, but obviously it's a more complex scenario than just simply saying do this or do that. It introduces other variables that move as well and are things to be considered also. The other is that while I'm not strictly looking at this from a strictly economic standpoint, obviously the numbers would have to work in whatever alternative we do decide to go with. But nevertheless, the economics are a consideration, and not just tonight, but in other meetings as well. The argument has been cited in terms of, well, the impact of whatever we're considering has a fairly minimal impact on the average taxpayer in town. In a sense, what's in it for me? What's in it for me? What's in it for me? And while I can certainly appreciate that argument, I don't necessarily always look at it from the individual taxpayer standpoint. And what I mean by that is, you know, we live in Maplewood together. We are a collective community. And so sometimes, while the benefit to an individual taxpayer may not be that great, from a collective standpoint, we do benefit. If we do something and it's, say, I'm just picking a round number, $100,000, maybe that's a new cop. Okay, maybe that's a new firefighter. While maybe the benefit to me is 10 bucks, it doesn't make much difference. Collectively, we will have benefited because we have a new firefighter or we have a new cop or something like that. And so I also encourage people not to strictly look at it from the standpoint of what's in it for me individually, but how do we benefit as a collective? You know, if we strictly applied that what's in it for me perspective on it, we might not pave any roads in town, because if there's a road over there that has a problem and I never drive on that road, why should that road be paved? I don't get any benefit out of it. So I don't say that to admonish people. I hope people don't take that the wrong way, but I'm simply trying to explain that some of my thought process is not necessarily looking at it from the individual taxpayer standpoint, but also how do we benefit as a collective community, because again, we're all in this together. And so I look at it from that perspective as well. Thank you.
Anyone else?
Yes. I just want to point out, it's my understanding that the developer incurs the costs of remediation of the site and the tear down, correct?
Yes.
So that would not be a cost that we would incur.
Well, it's part of it's a deal made with the purchase price.
Yes.
So there's a credit given for that.
I think the people that are arguing against tearing things down are not necessarily arguing about the raw dollar cost of tearing down. It's more, you know, the cost to the environment of tearing down an existing building, and you know.
Anybody else? Please call the roll.
Mr. Brownlee?
No.
Mrs. Larrier?
No.
Ms. Leventhal?
No.
Mr. Ryan?
No.
Mayor DeLuca?
No.
Noes have it. Fails.
The motion fails. The Maplewood Village Post Office redevelopment plan adopted by the Township Committee on July 16, 2013 shall be the plan going forward. We're going to take a 5-minute break.
Settled in here. Let's get started.
Now, do you still think it's warm?
Are we on?
Yes, we are.
Hello.
We're on.
Testing.
Hello,
hello.
Okay. We have another ordinance on final passage.
Okay.
Mayor, item number 8. Ordinance on final passage, ordinance number 2767-15. It's an ordinance to amend the zoning and development regulations of the Township of Maplewood. This ordinance shall amend certain provisions permitted home-based businesses.
This ordinance has been published, copies posted on the bulletin board in the municipal building, and copies made available to the general public in accordance with the law. Is there anyone who would like to speak on this ordinance on home-based businesses? Seeing no one, declare the hearing over, and can we get a motion, Mrs. Larrier?
I move this ordinance be adopted.
Mrs. Larrier.
No, Mrs. Larrier and I are swapping 8 and 9. We've discussed it.
Okay.
I move this ordinance be adopted as a whole, and the clerk be directed to publish the same as a passed ordinance in the Maplewood South Orange News Record according to law.
Do I still get the second?
Yes, you do.
Okay, second.
Mayor, if I may, this matter was referred to the planning board for its review. I received a memo on February 11th. Upon review, the planning board passed a resolution making a finding that the ordinance is consistent with the master plan, and the board supports the ordinance.
Any discussion? Please call the roll.
Mr. Brownlee?
Yes.
Mrs. Larrier?
Yes.
Mrs. Leventhal?
Yes.
Mr. Ryan?
Yes.
Mayor DeLuca?
Yes.
Item 9, ordinance on final passage, ordinance number 2769-15, to amend Chapter 239 of the Code of the Township of Maplewood entitled Streets and Sidewalks. This ordinance will allow temporary sports equipment to be placed on the grass median adjacent to the curb from April 1st to December 31st of each year.
This ordinance has been published, copies posted on the bulletin board in the municipal building, and copies made available to the general public in accordance with the law. Is there anyone who would like to speak on this ordinance? Seeing no one, Mrs. Larrier, can we get a motion?
Yes, Mayor, thank you. I move this ordinance be adopted as a whole, and the clerk be directed to publish the same as a passed ordinance in the Maplewood South Orange News Record according to law.
Second.
Any discussion?
I would just point out that the key word to this ordinance is temporary. There are still to be no permanent sports equipment installed in the grass median, and the time is from April 1st, I'm sorry, from December 30, no, from April 1st through December 31st. I'm sorry, I get confused. And you may not have this equipment in the grass median during that time. Other than that time, yes, thank you. I do like this ordinance.
If you're going to trade, at least, you know.
As is evidenced by the snow, so we...
Any other comments?
I think we shouldn't lose the opportunity to pat ourselves on the back over this, right? We had a citizen complaint about an issue. Things were illegal. We had a conversation about trying something out, seeing if it worked. We tried something out. It worked. We changed the law to make what worked permanent, and we did it with the help of citizen input and a willingness to be a little flexible and try things out. It's all good.
And we gave civic lesson to young people.
Indeed we did.
Yes.
Okay.
I'm done.
Please call the roll.
Mr. Brownlee?
Yes.
Mrs. Larrier?
Yes.
Mrs. Leventhal?
Yes.
Mr. Ryan?
Yes.
Mayor DeLuca?
Yes. We have another ordinance on final.
Item 10, Mayor, ordinance on final passage, ordinance number 2770-15, an ordinance to provide for the compensation of part-time and seasonal employees of the Recreation Department and the community pool. This ordinance will set the wages for part-time and seasonal employees in the Maplewood Recreation Department.
This ordinance has been published, copy posted on the bulletin board in the municipal building, and copies made available to the general public in accordance with the law. Is there anyone who would like to speak on this ordinance? Seeing no one, will get a motion. Ms. Leventhal?
I move this ordinance be accepted as a whole and the clerk be directed to publish the same as a passed ordinance in the Maplewood South Orange News Record according to law.
Second.
Any discussion? Please call the roll.
Mr. Brownlee?
Yes.
Mrs. Larrier?
Yes.
Ms. Leventhal? Yes. Mr. Ryan?
Yes.
Mayor DeLuca?
Yes. Okay, we're going to move to discussion items. First is the signage on right-of-way, and it says me, but it says Mr. Desiderio. That's who I want. Mr. Desiderio.
Mayor. I think at the last meeting I had failed to circulate it to everyone. Hopefully everyone has now gotten it. And what we are attempting to do is to regulate the issue of signage in the grass median between the curb and the sidewalk. And we sought to do that in two ways. We first sought to define it by saying, shall mean that section all dedicated streets, alleys, or common means of communication, travel, or drainage, which is what exists now, and an area 10 feet from the street curb measured to the adjacent property. 10 feet was there's no magic to 10 other than it was a discussion with Mr. Mittermeier and the engineering department, and generally considered the appropriate distance. We then also added open house signs may be placed in the grass area between the sidewalk and the street, or in the absence of a sidewalk within 3 feet of the curb adjacent to the subject property. There are some properties on Wyoming Avenue that don't have sidewalks. There may be some others as well, which I'm not particularly familiar with, but that's why we did that. And then we put in that all other signs are prohibited from being placed within the public right-of-way. The idea being that many of the signs that we see, some proliferation of, including the signs that talk about not speeding if your child lives in the area, etc. It's not a prohibition against those signs. It's simply a prohibition of putting them within that grass median strip. So people can certainly put those on their front lawn as a reminder to all of us to not go too fast, but we're trying to control that. So that's what we try to do here. I think we've achieved it. Hopefully we've satisfied Mayor Profeta, I was going to say. Can you believe that?
Did say it.
I did.
You did say it.
Mayor DeLuca.
You did say it.
I could. Yes, I am. Mayor DeLuca's issue with regard to the space in front of his house. So.
Well, I measured it.
Pardon me?
I measured it.
And did it
well,
work?
10 feet works, and we talked about this in the code committee. But I'll tell you what's still confusing is this whole right-of-way. Instead of just saying that signs cannot be closer than 10 feet to the curb.
Well, I think that we need to establish the authority of the municipality to regulate.
So there, you need the right of way.
Area, yeah.
All
I'm
right.
not trying to make it more confusing.
You're trying to. You're not trying to.
But I think there has
You
to
call me by a different name, it make people confused, so.
I understand.
Yeah.
Because someone would think you were.
I wonder.
Oh, believe me.
I wonder how that happened.
I'm not going there.
Yeah, let's not go there. The other thing that, this is in the sign ordinance, correct?
That is correct.
Or the right-of-way,
which is in the zoning ordinance.
Right. So the other recommendation from Mr. Mittermeier was that it should go in the sign ordinance, and it should also go in the obstruction ordinance. It should be carried in both of those ordinances.
Okay.
Obstruction,
I
street
did
obstruction.
not specifically look at that one, I don't think, but I will certainly do that. So the issue is, do you want to consider doing this? This was a discussion item with an expectation that you would advise me as to whether or not you want to move forward with it. Have Yes?
I think so.
Absolutely.
So what I'll do is I'll put it into both ordinances, okay, and I'll have it on for introduction at the next meeting.
Then it has to go to the planning board?
Yeah, we're okay, right? Because they meet the week in between the next
March
two meetings,
10th.
right? So the third, introduce on the 3rd, final on the 17th, planning board in between.
Okay.
Thank you, Mayor DeLuca.
Good try. Okay, next is the sewer fee. Now, this one has my initials, but I'm going to JM, Mr. Manning.
So we learned while our previous CFO was absent due to medical illness, the joint meeting decided that the Arizona Beverage Company really should be billed through Irvington because of the way the pipes went. And they notified that office. We didn't see it, but it really doesn't matter. What it means is that we anticipated X amount of money in our sewer levy, and we're going to get that much less. So, you know, that will just, the bottom line in terms of revenues that we anticipated will be less because we had anticipated that amount of money. Going forward, it won't have any effect because we'll have to anticipate what we, you know, whatever it is minus Arizona.
But won't we, I'm sorry. So we're not going to be getting that revenue in, but we're not going to be billed for it either.
No, exactly.
So is it a wash?
It's a wash, except that in terms of our revenues and what we anticipated this year, we will it will be less because of that $50,000 or $70,000, whatever it was. But that's okay because that going forward, it will just, as we said, a wash.
We'll we have not discussed whether we wanted to, whether there's a reason to think about increasing the sewer fee. Is there?
I'll let you know. I'll work on that tomorrow with, I don't think that there is, but I want to just double check because he's new to that and.
Okay.
I would ask when we talk about sewer fees that you not refer to it as a wash. It just
yes.
seems,
yeah.
Oh boy. Okay.
All right. That's it.
Okay. Let's just move down the pipe.
Well played.
Next
well played.
item
well
is
played, sir. well done.
Oh.
Well done.
Next item, 44th Street one-way result, one-way and results of the community meeting. So we had a meeting. Nothing's ever easy. We had a meeting last week. We got a good number of people coming out. We had some folks who were particularly concerned about the congestion that exists on Jacoby Street generally between 44th Street, Lee Court, and Springfield Avenue. Because you have parking on both sides. The driveways are single entry driveways. People generally move a car out, leave it on the street so other cars can get in and out. Oftentimes it's multiple families using that same driveway. So whether there's 44th Street one way or not, that area tends to be more congestion, and because 44th Street is not an escape route, I shouldn't use that. Because 44th Street is not a way to get out, you funnel people down. So there's some concern about that. On the other hand, there was some strong statements from people on 44th Street that their neighborhood has changed for the better dramatically. They feel safer, they feel, and I think it's because of the one-way, it's because the speed has been reduced, there's less cars, we've put more lighting there, we've cleaned up the brook area there. So they just feel that there's a heightened sense of community and safety there. So we had these two, and they certainly wanted the one-way to continue. The first group thought one-way should not continue. So Mr. Malavasi still believes that we should continue the one-way. In his recommendation, he says that the numbers merit the one-way staying in place. We also talked about some traffic restrictions on that corner of Springfield Avenue, doing some new signage, maybe painting some curbs yellow. The chief of police said that he will continue to do patrols there. They've given out some tickets. I think they give out 6 tickets, but they've also been there and get people to move along. I've spoken to the manager of the branch there, the bank branch, about letting people know. So what we would suggest, what we came out of the meeting with an agreement, is tonight suggest 2 more months of the pilot. to allow us to implement those changes up at the corner, see how we're doing as the snow melts and the cars recede a little bit to the curb, and then come back and see where we're at. Yes?
I wonder if some of the sense of community that 44th Street is enjoying and is not as a result of the cleanup and the lighting, and would not necessarily require the one-way. And how would we ascertain that?
Right. I mean, I think their feeling is it's all of that, including the one-way. That they just feel that there's a marked reduction in traffic. And that is something that they really are looking at in addition to speeds. You know, the speed in 2012 was 25 miles an hour, now it's 16 miles an hour. The number of cars was up to over 2,000, now it's 1,100. I'm sorry, that's Jacoby Street. On 44th Street it was 1,200, now it's 547. So it has made a huge difference, and they think that just all that is working.
Yeah, I mean it all contributes, but part of the original discussion was about the traffic and how cars exiting going towards Chancellor would throw things into the wooded area. There was some illegal dumping. So that was almost the trigger that got a lot of the other things added on as suggestions. So yes, those other things, you might say, well, could those things work in the absence of the original thing that kind of triggered all those suggestions? But I don't know, I kind of see them as a package as well. I think they would feel, and justifiably so, that that was kind of like the main thing started. The other things they almost considered to be those things should have been done anyway. I mean, this is more this was the trigger that kind of came that drove them to start thinking about the other things as well. So I wouldn't want to go back on the one-way part of it, since to me that's the main thing.
And since we have an agreement from all the folks who were at the meeting to extend it to extend it to, this is February, right? Extend it through till April 30th. I would suggest that we do that.
Is the, I don't recall the exact, I know they were complaining about the parking coming from there to Springfield Avenue. Is that parking illegal?
Yes.
It is illegal parking?
Yes. It's not signed. What it is that the 25 feet from the curb puts you in front of the driveway, the gate there. But because that business is closed, people are parking in front of the gate, so they're actually parking closer to in the 25. So Mr. Malavasi is going to sign it back far enough, no parking with arrows up.
Okay.
And the other side's already signed.
Okay. So this is sort of a combination of the signage and the enforcement side of it as well. So I heard you mention those two things, but I had a question about whether or not it was actually illegal there or not. Okay,
it is,
thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you.
The other thing is that, there's a proposed development for that site, which would also change a lot there. So that's something else that will develop in the next couple of months. So I think what I would suggest is if we could, because we run into a problem with our meetings, if we could extend it through May 6th, which is right after our meeting of May 5th. We just need we just do pass a resolution tonight, right?
Yeah, and then I'll memorialize it.
Okay. So this way, otherwise we get short. We'd have to have a meeting, a community meeting by mid-April. As opposed to having it in late April, if we do it on May 5th. We have our first meeting in May. This gives us a little extra time to have meetings and get people out.
I'll go along with whatever you're saying.
So
on that.
What I would suggest is we can get a motion to extend the pilot 44th Street one-way to Wednesday, May 6th, 2015.
Mayor, I move that we extend the pilot on 44th Street for one-way parking through May 6th.
Second.
Mr.
Call the
Brownlee?
roll.
Yes.
Mrs. Larrier?
Yes.
Mr. Leventhal?
Yes.
Mr. Ryan?
Yes.
Mayor DeLuca?
Yes, thank you. The last item is Transportation Trust Fund. The League of Municipalities and the New Jersey Conference of Mayors has asked us to consider passing a resolution that calls for funding of the trust fund. As you probably have read in the paper, there's some discussion about raising the gas tax, although the story on the front page today of the gas prices going up might not make that happen. But there's some serious problems with the trust fund coming up as far as the next go-around July. There's no money. Any money that comes in has to be used to pay existing debt. There's a proposal, and by the way, the only group up for election at the state level is the Assembly this year. The Senate does not run for re-election, the governor. So the Assembly is balking, as you might imagine, on taking the lead in raising the gas tax. So there's some discussion about offsetting the increase in the trust fund tax with a reduction in the inheritance tax. And so that's what's being discussed. But what most of the resolutions are is that they sort of generic, kind of vanilla. They ask for for the state to fully fund the trust fund and really don't get into how it should be funded.
Curiosity, when you say offset it, the inheritance tax, is that the threshold or the rate?
The threshold.
So they would raise the threshold?
Yes.
This is the...
Okay. Was it like 675 or something?
Something like that, yeah.
And it's
Yep.
the
Yep.
I don't know if they've given numbers for what they're...
I'm not sure what the numbers they were using, but there's also, you pay both, the estate pays and then the inheritor.
You get exempt from one and get whacked with the other one.
Right, right.
But there's Class A beneficiaries, you know, so
Right,
there's a whole bunch of exemptions for it.
And, you know, there's been some criticism of the transportation, or to solve this by raising the gas tax because it falls on working people, and they end up paying a higher proportion of their income for gasoline. So I don't know what you want to do. I brought it here. I have a little bit of ambivalence about raising the gas tax. I do think there needs to be a stable source of funding. But, you know, governors past have raided that fund, have borrowed to support that fund, have stolen money from other places to prop up that fund, and now there's just no more rabbits in the hat.
You know, when you say stable source of funding, I get, of course, nervous because the usual culprit in that case is property tax.
Right.
And so, I don't know, I would advocate that given our...
Well, I think what they were talking about is also proposing a constitutional amendment that says that the transportation, the tax on gas has to be used for transportation.
So it would okay. So it would...
So it's a dedicated fund.
Right, it's still variable, but at least it would be, you couldn't rate it, in a sense.
So what do other people think? We're basically being asked to support the funding of the Transportation Trust Fund.
Well, that part of it, I'm certainly in favor of.
Right.
You know, it's the other side of the equation that is problematic. Is what is the proposed source of funding to do that? I mean, we clearly have a need from an infrastructure standpoint to fund that. I mean, when are we running out? We're actually, is it May?
The end of June. There's no money. Actually, projects are being pulled back if they haven't started.
Yeah.
You know, money's being allocated to keep up bridges.
Yeah, within the next month or so. So,
Yeah.
so clearly the need is there. But I guess I'm wary of, for different reasons, about some of the different means of funding it. The estate tax, raising that, has a different effect than the gas, not the estate tax, the inheritance tax.
Oh, both. It's both.
Okay. The gasoline tax.
Well,
I'm not sure.
Okay, we don't have to do anything, or we can wait and see what else is being discussed, or we can just sort of say what they've asked us to say, is that we support funding the Transportation Trust Fund.
If it's just that, I suppose I can.
How can you be opposed to that, right?
Yeah.
Right. Yeah. I know, it's like ridiculous.
It's like, are you against mom and apple pie? I mean, but.
Right. When you had two lanes of the Route 3 bridge are closed.
Right.
And they're going to do what they want to do anyway.
Yeah, I mean, I understand it's symbolic, but
it's
Will they not?
Yeah.
Will they not do what they're going to do as far as how to fund it, with or without our letter of support?
Yes.
So
Yeah. I don't think.
If someone were to ask me to vote right now, I would say we could probably forego this letter.
Okay. I'm okay with that. I wanted to bring it to you all because this is something that's been discussed.
do you have a sense for when did they make? I don't recall. When did the league ask for this?
About 2 weeks ago.
2 weeks ago. I don't know if we have any kind of
After the mayor's meeting.
any kind of knowledge of what other municipalities are doing. Not that I necessarily want to follow what they're doing, but I'd be curious if other municipalities.
Oh yeah, I think they are. I think they're supporting it. Yeah. Supporting the call to fully fund the Transportation Trust Fund.
Again, it's like mom and apple pie, but.
Well, I think that just gives cover. It gives cover to the assembly people to say, well, the mayors and the councils in my town, the governing bodies in my district, support funding the Transportation Trust Fund. This is how we had to do it, blah, blah, blah.
Is there any, how do we say we want to support funding it and then say something to the effect, but we want you to come back to us when you figure out, to get our opinion when you figure out how you're going to do it.
That's happening.
I don't think they're going to do that.
Yeah. I think we should just wait. Let's wait a couple weeks and see what happens. Yeah.
I mean, I wouldn't vote against it. I would either forego it or I would vote for it.
Let's table it.
From a symbolic sense.
Let's table it and talk again about it in 2 weeks or next meeting and see where it's at.
Okay, I'm fine with
Because I think it is a complicated issue, and let's just see where it's at.
And I like, on one hand, if you increase the gasoline tax, maybe people will use their cars less, but it is regressive for those that do. And then if you change the inheritance tax, you're really helping the wealthy while you're making life harder for those.
And an awful lot of people who are using their cars, it's not discretionary.
Right.
Right.
Yeah, some is, some isn't.
Okay. Let's hold it off. We'll bring it back and see where it's going.
Mayor, can I ask that we remove Resolution 4215 and move for the adoption of the consent agenda without that resolution?
Is there a second to that?
Second.
That's the resolution about the
50 feet.
Okay, that's what I was asking.
Planning board.
Okay, so it's been moved and seconded for the consent agenda without Resolution 4215. And that includes the recycling collection.
I was wondering, could we have, just for the record, an explanation of that and how that came about and what it means for our residents going forward and when?
Well, I'll give you the background, and Mr. Manning can Mr. Manning can address what it means for our residents. It came about because this was actually the third try at this particular project. The first was we got one bidder, which I believe was BAFA, and that number came in, and we thought that number was frankly too high. he gave numbers. I believe, Mr. Manning, he gave a number for 1 year, once a week and twice a week, and that bid was rejected.
I mean, once
a week and once a week and every other week. Right. The second try, we came. We had 2 bidders, and there was a hearing on that. And number 2 was Gata, and number 1 was Bella. And there was a hearing. It went to court. Gata challenged it. The judge made a determination that the bid specs were defective and threw out both bids, and we had to rebid it again. The third bids were received on February the 10th. Only one bidder bid at that time, and that was Gata. I should give you the numbers. My recollection was Bella was 198, Gata was 248, 243, and this time Gata, who was the only bidder, was 263. We awarded an emergency contract because the contract expired as of December 31 to BAFA, who did the work from actually BAFA, right?
No, to
Basso.
Basso. I'm sorry, Basso, who did it from January 1st through the end of February. So really was not much choice. The contract had to be awarded as of March 1, which is why it's on. So it has not been a situation that has been beneficial to the township in terms of cost. And Mr. Manning, you can talk about the service.
Well, the service will begin on Monday, the 2nd of March, and every Monday thereafter, except for holidays, will be recycling pickup, so people can bring it to the curb. We have some ideas about going forward how we can possibly bring the cost down by changing the day of the week, and we'll have to look into that a little bit. But we're planning on going out much earlier this year so we can see what our options are, and if anything, stops us or there's a lawsuit, whatever, we'll have plenty of time.
So this is a 10-year,
Yes.
10-month bid?
No, it's not.
It's 12 months.
It's a 1 month.
Oh,
It's a 1 year. It's March 1 to February 29.
Right.
Okay.
So that's
Mr. Ryan.
Just a clarifying question. You said that Monday recycling won't happen if it's a Monday holiday. Does it get moved to Tuesday, or is it just doesn't count?
It does. Does it? Okay. Yeah.
Oh,
Thank you. Yes.
The other thing that we're going to work on, and I spoke to the mayor about this earlier, and I'll talk to Mr. Manning and to the assistant administrator, and that is the issue of why we didn't get more bidders. We talked about this the first bid, and that we only had 2 bidders, and now we only got 1 bid again. Why is that? Is it the volume of product? I mean, we just need to have a better understanding, and I think we're going to reach out and do some research so that we have a better mix of bidders the next time. I think even if bidders bid and they bid high, if you have that, you just have a better sense of and a more comfort level. I know that when I review these and there's only 1 bidder, it makes me somewhat uncomfortable. But in this instance, we're kind of in a corner. We got to get this awarded. So that's the history, Ms. Larry.
Thank you. I just have one real quick question. I'd be interested, well, probably I'll never know, but it seems odd that Gata came in with a bid that's, what, like $20,000 more?
More than
the
his
last
previous
time.
bid. Yeah.
And he was the only bidder. Is there any way he would have known in advance that he was going to be the only bidder? Why would he not have simply, so he didn't submit a lower bid thinking that the competition, he got beat out the last time.
Right.
Instead, he submits a bid that's $20,000 higher. That seems just very odd to me.
Yes.
Yeah, right.
It is odd.
You're absolutely right. I mean, could I make conjecture? It covers his attorney's fees for the last bid.
That's what I was thinking.
I mean, that's but I don't.
Yeah, let's not conjecture. We don't know why.
know.
We don't know why. We did everything we were supposed to do. Yes. We don't know why only 1 bid came back.
Yeah, why didn't Bella bid again? I no idea.
Yeah. Okay, anything more on this?
Just a question. So we're pulling off which one again? I'm coming back to which?
4215.
Okay, so if we take that off, do we have to? Are we voting on that separately, or does it just go away? Just procedurally, if there's an ordinance, you don't vote on it. It just
resolution.
resolution, it just
Goes away.
It's like it
just
never
goes away.
happened.
Okay.
Okay, please call the roll.
Brownlee?
With the removal of 4215?
4215.
Yes.
Mrs. Larrier?
Yes.
Mrs. Leventhal?
Yes.
Mr. Ryan?
Yes.
Mayor DeLuca?
Yes, thank you. We're at our second public comment period. Is there anyone who wants to address the Township Committee?
My name is Claire Roberts, and I live at 78 Woodside Road, and I have questions about the proposed RFP for animal control services to be shared with South Orange. At the break earlier this evening, I did speak to Ms. Larrier, who told me that the RFP is nearing completion. I wanted to ask, is it normal for an RFP to be done without community input? I also wanted to ask, is it possible to have any community input at this point? Earlier this evening, Mr. Brownlee, in another context, said, quote, "We're all in this together." That is the feeling that I have about this issue, and I would welcome any participation on the part of the community in this issue. Thank you.
Anyone else want to address the Township Committee? Okay, we're going to close the second public hearing. We'll go to administrative reports. Mr. Manning?
I just have one issue. Recently, we did send out an email blast. We did a code red, actually reverse 9/11, regarding recycling, changing it to a Saturday because of a snowstorm, which actually didn't happen. However, I did go around town and notice that there were people who had their recycling out on the Monday. So I just want to remind people that if you have a unlisted telephone number or you have a cell phone, which there is no listings for, you need to go on to our website to sign up for information, and you know, it's up in the right-hand corner. Sign in, give us your information, your work number, whatever it is you want us to get in contact with you, so you are aware when an emergency happens, what we're doing, what plans are there, and what options there are for you, the resident.
Okay.
Yes, and that's mine, unless there's questions.
I do have I would like you to, you heard Ms. Roberts talk about the community.
Yeah, I'll address it.
Excuse me. I'm going to ask Mr. Manning if he would address some of what was, so again, if you could tell us, South Orange is developing the RFP. Do we have any role in that process?
We will review what they're asking for, obviously, to see if it fits what our needs are. However, no, we don't have it in the development process. We are going to sign, or if it works for us, we are going to sign a shared service with them where they are the providers. So they will say, Maplewood, this is what we're willing to offer you. This is how much it costs. Do you want it or you don't? Now, obviously, I've asked to see it. They are in the process of having their governing body review it. They didn't at their last meeting because that last meeting was canceled. So at the next meeting, prior to the state of the village, they will do that. But typically, no. We don't typically go out and ask our community to please give us input on RFPs.
So, Mrs. Larrier, you have some suggestions that we've received from people in the community regarding this?
I do. I have one or two, specifically the latest one from Ms. Roberts, yes.
Okay.
Which
I've
already, that's already been forwarded to Mr. Manning.
Okay, just want to make sure that that's been there. Okay. Go ahead.
Yeah, no, I do have a question. And you may not know this number off the top of your head, but just for general understanding purposes of the public, about how many RFPs do we do during the course of a year?
10.
10? Okay. Just want to understand. Thank you.
Okay.
But in addition, there are a number of bids. I mean, so it's not, that's just RFPs, but The bid process is, I don't know, 20, 30, 40. I mean, you got road construction, you got building construction, you got all of that. So this is generally, because of the uniqueness of it, requires the expertise of the professionals in the township, okay? And that's the process by which the RFPs and the bids are put together. So it's not an issue of seeking input from the public. It's an issue of the professionals going out and putting these specs together.
No, I appreciate that. I thought the number was more than 10, to be honest. But thank you for adding that in. I just wanted, from a general public understanding, to understand how much we would be talking about if we were to go to the public. If you're talking 40 of those and 10 of those, you're talking like 50 different things. Again, not to whatever, but I mean, that'd be 50 things that we'd be going to the entire community to weigh in on.
But this is a South Orange RFP, and we're going to have a chance to look at it if we have any comments.
And I have the women's comments. Yeah.
Okay, Mr. Desiderio.
I have nothing to report, Mayor.
Okay. Ms. Fritzen?
I do have something to report. I think you'll see an improvement in the microphones tonight.
Yes.
What?
We had them again
What?
serviced. What? Can you hear me now?
What?
Can you hear me now? Can you hear me?
Since our last Township Committee meeting, we did have AED and CPR certification class with 19 Township employees participating. Mr. Manning is able to save us now, so I feel good about that. And it was a great program, and we anticipate having at least another class later in the year. I know Ms. Leventhal is interested. And again, great participation, 19 people certified, and they received cards with their certification. We will have, as I have mentioned, an ABC person-to-person transfer at our next meeting, March 3rd, which is the Boyden Pantry license to Maplewood Barrel. It's going to end up being a person-to-person, but in the pocket. I also received an application yesterday, a 20-page application for upcoming person-to-person transfer of the Highland Place license. So I'll give you that information once I take a look at it. That'll be scheduled once that person is printed, so probably about 2 months down the road.
Okay, 2 months to the Highland Place transfer. And is it just person to person?
Person to person, and it'll take about 2 months to get the record check back. So
it stays at that place.
No, it does not have to stay at that place.
But wouldn't we have to do a place-to-place transfer?
Oh, I'm sorry, I misunderstood you. Person to person, place to place.
It's both, in this case. We know the place it's transferring to?
You know, it came in yesterday afternoon. I have not even reviewed it yet, but I'll get that information to you. That's all I have. Thank you.
Okay. Yes, Mr. Bradley.
Just a question, is it a question of having microphones or heat? But not both?
We're not generating sufficient hot air. That's what we need.
If we put all our money together, maybe we can have both.
Okay.
There are many things, but suggesting that we're not generating sufficient hot air is certainly not true.
All right. Okay. Anything else?
No, Mayor.
Thank you. Ms. Leventhal?
No report, Mayor.
Mr. Ryan?
The only thing I'd like to say is that if you haven't already seen it, I thought the Village Green did a delightful article about the woodland. It really speaks well to our purchase, and it speaks well to our management of the building. If you haven't already had an opportunity to attend an event at our most recent acquisition, you should. It's quite nice.
In the village?
In the village,
yes. Mrs. Larrier?
Yes, Mayor. Just one thing. In light of recent issues regarding vaccinations, there has been a letter sent to all of the daycares and private schools in this area, in this community, urging them to bring all of their vaccination records up to 100%, because of the issues in the media regarding people opting out of vaccinations. So our health department decided to send that out. I believe Mr. Rose suggested that he wanted to do that, but that letter did go out.
Great, thank you. Mr. Brownlee?
I don't have a report, but I do have a question, and perhaps I should have asked it earlier. I thought I saw someone remark earlier, this is regarding the post office move. I know they're having the delays that they've been having, but the old location is closed, but is there any signage indicating that they've moved to a new location? I thought I saw an account somewhere saying that there was no signage, it was just closed.
I'll go look tomorrow. I don't know. I didn't get a chance today.
I thought there was a small sign on the window.
Well, we'll make
It was something? Okay.
But certainly nothing significant.
Well,
okay.
It's unbelievable. This is the United States Postal Service.
Yeah, but come on.
We didn't get, my neighborhood didn't get mail today.
What's that?
How's that?
You're getting penalized.
Come on.
Because the post office was closed.
Anything else?
No report.
I got mail today, no problem.
I have three things. First, we received, I got a letter that we received $27,700 from the Governor's Council on Alcoholism and Drug Abuse grant. So, you have this? Yeah, you can have this. Mr. Rowe has a copy, but you can have this copy. Second, this Thursday night, 7:30 p.m., DeHart Community Center, there's Hilton Neighborhood Association and the Hilton Library jointly are having a Black History Month activity. It's called Shared History. They'll be showing a documentary. And one of the neighbors in Hilton, Rhonda Kearse, will be talking about the film and leading a discussion. And lastly, Princeton has passed an ordinance around wage theft. And this really goes to landscaping workers, community. And what I wanted to do was to get some information, and I just wanted to let you know I'll be passing it around, seeing if we want to think about something. This is, what's happening is that people who work for some of these landscaping and other day workers are being ripped off. And there are ways to, that Princeton and New Brunswick have looked at to address this. So once I get this, I will let you know. Okay. Anything else? Get a motion to adjourn?
Yep.
Is there a second?
No.
Oh, I'm sorry, go ahead.
I'm sorry, I had a question in my, oh, did you want to mention Springfield Avenue Partnership and African American History Month?
That's right, there's a big jazz concert, Saturday night, 7 p.m. And there's also, if you go on to the Springfield Avenue Partnership website, you will be able to find out a host of activities. And equally important, this Township Committee on Saturday will be on Springfield Avenue for Talk to the Township Committee.
Yay.
In front of Walgreens.
Yay.
Is it going to be warmer than it is in here?
It is going to be warmer.
In here?
No, not in here. It's going to be as cold as it is in here. So we'll be up there from 9 to 12. I'll send an email out to see who's in and everything. So with that, we have a motion and a second to adjourn.
So moved.
All in favor? All opposed? Thank you. We'll see you on March 3rd.